Welcome to another live from here at Lincoln Square. I'm your host today, Rick Wilson. I'm joined by my friend Adam Kinzinger, and we are going to talk. We're going to talk about the weakest, most bitch-faced people to ever have 100 days in office. You know, Adam, and it's one point you've been making lately. It's like that these people are not the strong people they pretend to be. They're weak as hell. They really are a bunch of cowards and chicken shits. And I wanted to talk about that in the context of this first 100 days because I think it's important that people don't look at this and go, "Oh my God, it's all doom and gloom." These people are fucking up at every second of the day.
Yeah, look, I think it's a couple things. So it's funny because I'm kind of trying to switch my mindset. I read this book called The Gap and the Gain, and we'd spend 30
Yeah,
minutes if I explained it. But the point is, you can always look at like the delta of what you haven't achieved, and we in our lives are always going to have stuff we haven't achieved, right?
sure.
It makes you depressed. But then you have to look at what you have achieved, and if you look at the fact that it's only been 100 days, this guy's numbers are in the toilet. I mean,
Yeah,
absolute toilet. I've never
toilet.
seen I've never seen him have numbers in the toilet on the economy, which is there.
No.
He's underwater on immigration. You have millions of people in the streets, and this isn't the pink hat rallies, the day after the inauguration or whatever.
Right.
These are regular Americans in every town, in every state coming
Hmm.
together. I think it's a big deal. And yeah, on the sissiness of these people, listen, and this has been my message when I've talked to I still talk to members of parliament and foreign governments and stuff is
Sure.
like, look, Trump backs down when you confront him. He
Yep.
always backs down. He's actually I like to think of him as like a 6-year-old boy who's still trying to get his dad's approval and he's scared. And you would feel bad, except that he's ruining the country with him. And
Right.
everybody around him exists only in this atmosphere that says, you can be tough because everybody around you is tough and the president's tough. The second we pop that bubble, it's all over. And I think it's pretty close, honestly.
Yeah, I do too, Adam. And I think I look at this every day, and I'm like, there's a point where members of Congress, even the ones who pretend to be the most avid loyalists, are going to go, "Oh shit, Elon Musk is 70-25 in my district, upside down, and Trump is 60-40 upside down in my district, and this isn't good." And
Right.
they won't. I don't think they're ever going to go and have the big blow up. A lot of people want them to have like a moment of like, "How dare you, sir?" I think they're just going to walk away, slink into the shadows, pretend they don't know him, and that'll make him in some ways more crazy.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. And look at just from the base perspective. So, look, members of Congress are just going to reflect what it takes to get reelected. But from the
Sure.
base perspective, yeah, what 60 or 70% are probably hardcore MAGAs. As they
Yep.
said, he could open an abortion clinic in the Oval Office and they'll still support him. But like
Right.
30% are the people that you and I talked to that frustrated us that are like, well, yeah, but I don't like Kamala or I didn't like
Right.
Biden and he was better for the economy. I hate Trump, but he's better for the economy. Those are the people that are going to fall away. And that is going to leave them out hanging. And you're starting to see people like Don Bacon, who I really personally like. I just,
Right.
we went through January 6th and he didn't speak up. So I still have, issues with that, but I'm a friend of
Sure.
his. But he's starting to speak out. But he actually put out a tweet today about how Trump elected, Carney up north. And so you'll start to see a little more courage come out. But I mean,
Yeah.
look, just the reality is it's going to be a long 4 years. And I think we have to accept that. But, just like the Republicans, they got in the moniker this idea of the Biden crime family, even though they
Right.
found no crimes, right?
Ever.
But everybody heard that. It took them 4 years to get that in the moniker. We have to start getting things like Trump crime family and stuff out there and recognize it's not going to happen in 100 days. It happens in 4 years, but we have to stick to it and be disciplined.
I think that's exactly right, Adam. We've got to keep up a branding and narrative setting and saying these people are not they may be scary and reckless, but they're not undefeatable. They're not Superman. They're not able to pull off some sort of magic in this world that nobody
I mean,
else can do.
have you seen Trump's pants lately? Like, you want to talk about a guy that's not tough? Honest to God, on the picture, there's this much space between the bottom of his boobs and the top of his pants.
Oh yeah,
And you like see a man that is in complete physical decline, that is sweating. For some reason, I guess when he looks in the mirror, he doesn't notice the giant makeup ring around him, and his internals are just pumping sludge around in there. It's like
the,
that guy's not tough.
when I read that so-called physical he got, I'm like, oh yeah, sure, Donald Trump
Yep.
weighs 225.
Yep.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt. no doubt. And I'm at 180 if that's the case. But look, he does have I think members of Congress. As Murkowski said the other day, there are some that are they're intimidated by him, they're scared of him. That's a real thing. That doesn't like just go away. But there is a point now, I think, with this economic train wreck that is really because that went to the core of what he was. That was the core of it. It was, I don't like Kamala, but he's better on the economy, like you just said. I don't like Kamala, but he'll give me a tax cut. I don't think he's great, but he'll give me a tax cut. He'll expand, jobs again. And now I think he's just lost that ball so hard. I don't think he's got that mojo again. And I don't know how he gets that back, given how badly he's fucked this thing up.
Yeah, I don't either. And so, like, if the Democrats a lot of times would hit him on kind of the economy under COVID, and I always thought that was, like I get it. Probably as a political operative, I would have too, but it kind of landed hollow because most Americans recognize that the economy collapsed under COVID because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
This is different. There was no COVID. There was no, war with
Nope.
China. All that's happened is Donald Trump put out not just tariffs, but tariffs that everybody now knows were based on nothing. It was a flawed, a flawed freaking formula. We tariffed islands with only penguins on them, and on top of that, we've done things like we've tariffed coffee. Do you realize the United States doesn't grow much coffee? We grow a
Yeah.
tiny bit in Hawaii and California. We grow 1% of the coffee we drink. So
Right.
all we're doing by tariffing coffee is not building coffee industry here. We're just
Right.
screwing ourselves. And I think people are understanding that.
Yeah, I think it's starting to hit like the closures of auto plants around the country, and if you were a typical auto worker in America, demographically speaking, the chances are you were a big backer of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
from what we know from the research. Farmers also tended to be big backers of Donald Trump. They're getting screwed. Heavy industry across this country is getting screwed. American, exports of livestock and ag product and timber and energy, all of it's going through the floor because this administration has absolutely, you're right. COVID was, I mean, Trump mishandled COVID, but COVID was an externality. It was a meteorite hitting the earth. Nobody could stop it even if they had wanted to. But this was it by choice. This was a fuck up by choice. And I think it's harder for people to forgive. And as much as Republicans were like, "Oh, the economy is terrible under Biden," they knew it wasn't. They just wanted Trump to take credit for when he came in. So I do think that it's like there's no other person to blame for this. He can't just go, "Oh, that Peter Navarro was an intern. I didn't know who he. I mean, I don't know why he did this. He did this. Trump chose this path."
That's right, and I think it's true. He owns it. And by the way, the other thing that most Americans know, the frustration in this business is we know a lot of things that don't break through to the mainstream America, right?
Right.
You're like, come on, guys. But I think one thing they know is there were people in the administration telling Trump not to do this, and that
Sure.
he did it anyway. And they understand inherently that tariffs are bad. Tariffs are, look, if he said we're going to use tariffs pretty directly against China because of unfair trade practices, probably 90% of Americans would have agreed
Sure.
with that. But this
Yeah,
was like,
and by the way, that was the Biden policy to focus
yeah,
narrowly on currency manipulation and egregiously unfair trade practices.
yeah, yeah. But listen, after COVID, the supply chains were naturally correcting, right? We
Yeah.
recognized, for instance, that we haven't made penicillin in the United States since 2004. There were incentives to make penicillin here. You started to see these supply chains
Yep.
leave China and come to places like, yes, some to the United States, but a lot to Mexico so they could continue, or Honduras or El Salvador, so they could continue to have the low cost labor that they need. And we started tariffing them. So now
Right.
we've disincentivized them to nearshore. Now they may as well go to China or anywhere else. Now, I think the big thing when you talk about auto workers and farmers that we all need to understand is we're going to be frustrated because we're all going to know farmers that are getting screwed that still support Trump, right? But this takes time for any humans to recognize, and
That's right.
even that they made a mistake, and it takes even longer for them to admit it. I've got somebody very close to me, a family member, that
Mhm.
I know this person is in finance. I know they regret voting for Trump. They won't tell me that. And he continues to tell me like, no, Trump is, the stock market was bound to correct. Okay, sure, yeah, stock market, and
$10
so,
trillion
but
dollars.
Yeah, right. Not that, but there will be
Pretty
a
much.
day that they finally come and recognize it. And so I would just say to everybody watching, like the thing is don't be super frustrated because farmers still support him. I think you're going to see that
Yeah.
crack, but it will take time.
But and I also think, Adam, it's still, that hardcore of the MAGA base is never gonna change.
Yeah.
The world could be on fire and they would say it's paradise. But I think this is a slow erosion. I think by the time 2026 rolls around, that erosion will have had some pretty bad impacts on a lot of these Republican House members. I don't
Mhm.
know that it's going to change the Senate ball game all that much just because of the way the map is. But I think you and I have both seen enough members who, when they realize when you're getting yelled at in the town hall meeting, something has gone terribly wrong.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a good point. So this is why I think it's so important when we talk about town hall meetings. I'll tell you from a guy that did them. I
Mhm.
hated town hall meetings. I hated them.
Sure, everybody
Right?
does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you hate them, and especially you hate them when people that are against you, in my case, 90% of the time, it was the far right that would turn out and yell at me at town halls. But what you would hate, because you would have to stand up, you would have to defend your actions, you would have to explain it, and it would make you literally leave and be like, "I fucking hate this job. Why am I doing it?" Right? And so that's what we're trying to do is make them answer to you.
Yep.
Like I said, I'm very serious about this. Don't, if you see them having dinner with their family, don't confront
Don't
them,
do that.
because
Yeah.
yeah, that backfires every time. Makes you look bad
Every time.
every time. But like, if you want to protest their office, if you want to make sure, do that kind of stuff. Make it uncomfortable for them so they have to. And by the way, a telephone town hall or a virtual town hall is not a replacement. That is a
No.
billboard. I used to do those as billboards. They're not replacements for real town halls.
Yeah, and I think you saw like Mike Lawler yesterday really start to, he didn't want to do a town hall. I was told that his advisor said, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it." Or 2 days ago, I guess it is now. And he got his ass handed to him in a way he didn't expect. He thought he could convince them of Doge and convince them of the cuts and convince them because he, lives in a marginally Republican district, but it was not going over well. And I think a lot of these guys, they're going to try to stay away from it, but I think we're seeing, as you said, it's not the pink pussy hats anymore. There are people organizing right now in every congressional district all over this country. They're in the streets. They're at these marches. They're big. They're peaceful. They're loud, and they don't come across as like super progressive ideology. They come across as pissed off Americans, like redressing asking for redress of their problems with their government.
Yeah, and can I say that's what it needs to be? Like, this is the biggest thing
100%.
is we have to continue to remind ourselves that this is not the right against the left, right?
No.
This is not the left rising up against the right. If you want that, I'm going to tell you you'll fail. This is freedom loving, like democracy loving, liberal
Yep.
small L Americans against illiberal Americans. And so what does that mean? It means you're going to have some people on the right, it means you're going to have some people in the center
Yep.
and people on the left. And we're all going to have to learn to ride in the same car together because we're all in the same fight. You march to war with the army you've got. And in this case, we
Absolutely.
may be people that never got along in the past, but we've got to get along now. And actually, honestly, Rick, that's kind of cool if you think about it. Like, there's something
Absolutely.
so unique about this that I actually get pretty excited to think about it.
I do too, Adam. I think that's so right. And I feel this sense of like, we've got to all put aside our ideological predicates in the short term to win a battle against something that will destroy us all in the
Yeah.
immediate future if we don't come together as a country. And I think there are a lot of people who realize this and who are like, listen, we're not going to go out. It's not going to be about this or that group's particular issue in these marches. It's going to be about how do we turn this problem around? How do we preserve this republic? How do we save democracy? And I think it is just such a, and watching these protests grow and grow, it tells you there's a movement out there blooming of Americans who are not, they're not political nerds like us. They're not submerged in every single issue every day. They just know something's badly broken and they feel the threat coming at us at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, and it's only been 100 days. That's the thing is like, yeah, it feels like it's been a year. It's only been 100 days. We're seeing this grow. Yeah, probably a lot of the people that are turning out were the people that turned out, February of
Sure.
2017, but a lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't. In June 6th, I think, and I'm getting more information about this later today, but there's
Mhm.
going to be a rally in DC for veterans kind of
Yep.
opposing this. And you think about somebody like Elon Musk, who's now got a 30-some% approval rating, which, I mean, he went
Right.
from being like a 90% approval rating to
Right.
30. Like, that
Right.
guy lit himself on
It's
fire.
like Bin
Like,
Laden numbers.
oh my god, yeah, totally, totally. Um, I think diarrhea has about a 30% approval rate. And so he, he's lit himself on fire. And when you think of Elon Musk now, I don't even think of rockets. I think of a guy standing on stage at CPAC with a chainsaw,
Right.
telling you, all the thousands of people we have watching us right now, what you can live without in the government. By the way, he's worth $500 billion. And
Right.
has there been any cuts to SpaceX contracts?
Weirdly,
Of course not.
no cuts to SpaceX and a lot of no bid contracts for SpaceX. And
Totally. And Tesla now,
what a
by the way.
surprise!
I know. And here's the thing, Rick, that I think is so important for all of us is to I think one of the biggest things that Trump is going to be known as in 10 years, so it will
Mhm.
benefit us to label it now, is corrupt. This is the most
Sure,
corrupt administration that's ever existed. We could go into the
by
cryptocurrency
by
stuff.
far.
But here's another, even the betting site Kalshi, okay, Kalshi, you
Mhm.
can now bet on politics, which I'm not necessarily against if you're voting on like outcomes of, or you're betting on outcomes of
Right.
elections and stuff. But guess who is the chief advisor to Kalshi now? I'll tell you, Don Jr. He's
What
on
a
Kalshi's board.
surprise!
Yep. And by the way, you were able to bet on what countries Trump would tariff and what he wouldn't, what he would tariff them at. I was noticing the odds were a little skewed, which means I think there were people in the White House that knew who was going to be tariffed that were making those bets. And by the
Sure.
way, if you're a U.S. senator, you should go to Syria before July because there's a bet. Will a U.S. senator go to Syria before July? And if you say yes, it's 3-to-1 odds. You put down $100, you get 300. So this
Jump
is
on
the
it.
kind of corruption that's going on now that we've got to be careful about.
Yeah, and I think these other stories about people who have been in the that the CEOs from Wall Street banks and hedge funds are getting stock tips basically. Hey, tomorrow we're going to pull back some tariffs on this or that issue, and they're betting on it. And
Yeah.
of course, the big bet when Bessent managed to get Navarro and Lutnick out of the office for an afternoon, that Trump came out and announced that there was a massive buying surge on Wall Street for SPY for futures. Um, Suddenly, mysteriously, right before Trump announced it. So the corruption, a lot of times corruption is smaller than people think it is. It's, a few
Yeah.
thousand here, a few
Totally.
thousand there, but this is corruption with a B before the illions.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Totally. Like I always told people, it was funny because, you always get the comments like, how much is Ukraine paying you? Right. Like,
Right.
right. But
Yeah.
they'd be like, you're corrupt. And I was like, look, when I was in Congress, honest to God, I wouldn't even know how to be corrupt. Like, I don't even know what I could do. Like,
Right.
my one vote is not worth somebody paying me for it. And then, like, I guess I could have stolen a little bit from my federal accounts, but it wouldn't have been long till they noticed that. How do you
Right.
feel it? You have to put in like extra mileage reimbursements or something, but that would have gotten
Ooh,
noticed.
yeah.
Now, if you're a corrupt Republican, y- just do whatever you want because it is a rule in this administration that you will
Yep.
not be prosecuted if you're a Republican.
Nobody's going to take a single look at anything, whether it's the SEC, the FEC, the DOJ. If you're a Republican right now, you've got, pretty much a license to steal.
Yeah, you do.
So, hey, well, Adam, listen, man, I appreciate you coming on today. I want
Yeah,
to
great.
let you get moving here, and I want to thank everybody else for coming in today. Thanks so much for joining, folks. You can always catch us doing these things over here at Lincoln Square. You can also catch me over at my Substack at the Rick Wilson, and Adam Kinzinger has an amazing Substack as well, which you should follow and subscribe to. All right, folks, we'll talk to you again very soon. Thanks, Adam.
See ya. Take care.